There's been a lot of talk in Vietnam in policy circles and in newspapers about the middle income trap. And people are concerned that as countries like Vietnam move from lower middle income status to upper middle income status, that growth will inevitably slow down. So if we want to understand this problem, which has been a widespread trend in the developing world, including in Asia, we need to understand particularly those few countries like Korea, Taiwan, Singapore that have managed to escape the middle income trap. Those few countries in the region that have managed to move from upper middle income to high income countries, to become rich countries. And if we look at those countries, a couple of things really stand out as important. One is the central role of manufactured exports. And that's something that Vietnam has done very well. Vietnam has managed to grow its manufactured exports at double-digit rates, particularly over the last decade. So that's a positive sign for Vietnam. The second thing is productivity growth. So within manufacturing, is productivity, what we mean by productivity is output per worker per day or per year, is it growing at a regular rate? And here Vietnam is not doing as well as those other countries. So we need to ask why labor productivity growth in manufacturing is not as fast as it was in the newly industrialized countries of Asia. And that's largely because manufacturing in Vietnam is so heavily dependent on imports. So more than half of the value added of Vietnam's manufactured exports is imported. It's another way of saying that the structure of manufacturing industry in Vietnam is very thin. In other words, most of the materials that are used in manufactured exports come from other countries. They're not made in Vietnam. So the supply chains are not very deep within Vietnam. They depend very much on imports from other countries, largely from China. So the question then about the middle income trap becomes how to deepen those domestic supply chains, how to produce more of what goes into Vietnam's manufactured exports coming from Vietnamese companies. And that's a hard question, mostly because there are very few actually domestic Vietnamese manufacturing companies. Now there are some, and some of them are actually doing really well and are very profitable, but by and large, Vietnamese businesses are very heavily concentrated. By what I mean by Vietnamese businesses, I mean businesses owned by Vietnamese people are very highly concentrated in services, in agriculture, and particularly in property development and financial sector. Those are very inward-looking industries. Those are industries that serve basically the domestic market. So for Vietnam to escape the middle income trap and to learn from China and Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, it will need to build more Vietnamese companies that are producing manufactured goods for export. Now there's another whole series of questions about how to do that, but that's essentially the problem facing Vietnam.